my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm going to cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by Zenith Health. Navigating pregnancy can be overwhelming, especially when it feels like everyone has an opinion, not to mention the late-night Googling and social media rabbit holes we've all found ourselves in. Zenith Health helps you navigate pregnancy with access to real evidence, bringing you peace of mind through data. Imagine if your Google searches only returned answers based on real evidence from research studies, clinical guidelines, and physician-authored content. Instead of giving you more opinions, Zenith's Pregnancy Evidence Navigator, or Penny tool, provides exactly that, and it's completely free to use. Next time you have a burning question like a new symptom, a supplement you're unsure about, or a question as you're planning for birth, spare yourself the panic Google and ask Penny your question for a real-time, unbiased review of the evidence at www.zenithhealth.io. At the same time, what really excites me about Zenith is that they've also started the Pregnancy Evidence Project, which is the first large-scale research project wholly focused on learning from the millions of pregnancy and postpartum experiences already happening in the real world. If you choose to opt into this, your pregnancy journey becomes part of the evidence that helps future moms make informed decisions and drives research forward. I'll be discussing both Penny and the Pregnancy Evidence Project in depth with the founder of Zenith, Abigail, at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that conversation. We would also love to welcome you into our listener supporter group via Patreon. That's at patreon.com/birthhour. And by becoming a Patreon supporter, you get access to all of our archived episodes. This podcast launched in 2015, so we have over 800 episodes in the archives that are not in the main podcast feed. So you can get your fill of birth stories. And you'll also get access to our private Facebook group for Patreon members, which is a great place to honestly just to search the past posts to get answers to questions, but then of course to ask new questions, find community. It's a really, really great supportive group of people. So I highly recommend joining that. We would love to have you there. We also do monthly Zoom calls with our Patreon supporters, and you get an opportunity to enter your birth story via a different submission form than everyone else uses, and we choose 2 Patreon members each month to share their birth stories. So that is again at patreon.com/birthhour. And of course, I have to mention our Know Your Options online childbirth course, which started just a couple years after the Birth Hour started, and it's really grown into an amazing community. You get lifetime access with that. So we have members returning for subsequent births and things like that. For the content of that course, I partnered with my friend Stephanie, who is a childbirth educator. She's also a birth and postpartum doula, a lactation consultant, and now a sleep consultant as well. So she has so much knowledge, and she really believes in evidence-based teaching. And that's been the whole goal of that course. So I'm grateful to everyone in that community. I know I'm not as active on social media with my personal life now that my babies are a little bit older, but if you want to get to know me more, I'm in those communities all the time. I'm on the Zoom calls every month, and I just love having that personal connection with the Birth Hour community. Today's birth story guest is Samantha, and she has 3 birth stories to share with us, but has 5 babies. So she had triplets with her 3rd birth. But before we get to that story, we're going to hear about her experience having a baby at 26 weeks and 5 days due to preeclampsia. And then she went on to have a pretty straightforward VBAC and then spontaneous triplets. So she has been through a lot. She talks about postpartum preeclampsia with her triplets as well. So that's part of her story. But that's enough for me. Let's get to Samantha. Hi, Samantha. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Bryn. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Before we get to your stories, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah. So my name is Samantha Gunny Hines, and I live in the Washington, D.C. metro area with my husband, Eric, and our 5 children, my 7-year-old daughter, 4-year-old son, and 22-month-old surprise triplets, 2 girls and a boy. And through it all, music is still my life, but currently busy being a mom of 5 and following my passion for helping pregnant women and moms thrive thrive in their mom journeys, especially given all that God has taken me through to bring my own little crew into the world. So that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. I think you are officially our first triplet story. So
Yay.
I'm excited to get to that. We're at like 1,000 episodes and haven't had one before. So that tells you it's very rare, as I'm sure were shocked to find out when you were expecting triplets. But let's go ahead and start with your first pregnancy and birth, whatever you want to share there.
Yeah. So my husband and I are college sweethearts, and we were married for a few years and decided that we wanted to start a family. And so it took a few months, and we found out we were pregnant with our first child. And that was around the beginning of December. And we were, of course, elated. But early on, we knew that this was not going to be the average first pregnancy experience. And it was a few weeks later, between Christmas and New Year's, I experienced bleeding. It was like dark spots. And then one time it just turned into a really good amount of bright red bleeding. And of course, I freaked out. I was shopping with my mom and my niece, and my mom was like, call your OB. And so I was crying, not sure what was going on. My OB reassured me. I was about 8 weeks at the time, but I had a subchorionic hemorrhage, and that's the separation of the outer chorionic membrane and your uterine wall. And I didn't know what that meant, but he, reassured me, told me to stay strong and that it'll probably resolve on its own. However, of course, he knew I was out and moving around the holidays. New Year's was around the corner. He said, of course, worst case scenario is this could cause a miscarriage. So take it easy. And right from the jump, I was on a week worth of bed rest. So I welcomed New Year in bed. And that was the start to what would be a crazy first pregnancy. So fast forward, I was about 23 weeks. Thankfully, all of that resolved and everything was well. But fast forward to about 23 weeks, I had a successful monthly checkup. And just a few weeks later, I paid attention to what I always call as a little tap from God, because I had right side neck pain and it was very achy, almost sore. And I called my primary doctor, which I never would because it was just neck pain. It wasn't a big deal, but I was just being precautious. And I went in, she gave me an appointment for the next day. And come to find out, I had a blood pressure reading of 163 over 115. And I was so uneducated that I was like, is that a bad number? Is that a problem? And they were like, yeah, because I never had blood pressure issues before. I had no symptoms at all. And so what she told me to do was, go home, take another reading. And if it continues that way, immediately go to the hospital. And so I went home, took another reading. It was terrible. And I drove myself to the hospital. And this was, again, just a few weeks past my normal checkup. At 26 weeks, I get there and they inform me that I had severe preeclampsia and that I might have to deliver that night. And I was freaking out because I didn't even make it to my third trimester yet. And they were telling me that, you know what, this is going to be hospital, hotel. My husband, of course, I called him, he came up and they were saying, we want to get you to 30 weeks, but we'll aim for 28. We wanted to keep the baby in utero as long as possible for her health and yours. But I only made it 4 more days. And that morning I had a failed epidural. I had these uncontrollable shakes and eventually had to be put under general anesthesia. And my 1-pound baby girl was delivered at 1 p.m. that afternoon with the emergency C-section. However, what was really scary was that I blacked out that whole day. And so after that morning, and the epidural didn't work or all these things, and they put me under, what I'm about to tell you is just strictly based off of what my husband told me and the medical professionals whose care I was under told me, because I wasn't conscious that day. And so I only had spots of consciousness that I remember to this day of being like wheeled down the hallway on a gurney. And they're like, who's the president? And, what year is it? And my husband yelling my name, trying to wake me up and like showing me like the phone that he took, where he took our baby girl's picture before she was wheeled into the NICU. And he was like, you did great, Sam, Samantha. And so what ended up happening was I had 2 blood transfusions that day and apparently a room full of nurses. And what my husband told me was one of the nurses in particular, who he, said was responsible for helping save your life during one of the most critical hours, was she decided to listen to an observation my husband had and call back my delivering doctor and take me off of the magnesium drip, which I was on because of the preeclampsia. And they said after that, they saw a big improvement in my vitals. And, the nurse, she adjusted. She had no ego. She just listened to her patient's advocate, and trusted that that was enough to pivot her expertise. And, the next day, the nurses, because I woke up in the wee hours of the morning, the nurses came in and they were in awe, and they were like, oh my God, like we just didn't know. The day shift nurses, they were like, we went home and we were just scared. We didn't know what happened, because they said it was a line where I almost could have lost my life because of all the complications and the blood loss and my vitals. My hemoglobin dropped to a dangerously low number. And so all of that just at once. And so I woke up on Mother's Day, the wee hours in the morning on Mother's Day. And my baby girl, she was always breathing on her own. She had a long 3-month NICU stay ahead of her. But she was, well, we got through it, and, thank God for it. But regarding my health, after delivery, I was put on blood pressure medication for a couple months or so after that. And I kept a digital log. I made sure to take my blood pressure readings every day. And I noticed that when they had my postpartum checkups, 2 to 3 weeks after delivering, because I had to be seen a little bit more because of all the complications, they switched my prescription from labetalol to a stronger prescription of nifedipine. And I want to put a little pin in that because that was such a significant observation that's going to help in my last pregnancy. But that was pretty much my first experience into motherhood. And there we go, 3 years later for my second pregnancy, which was smooth sailing.
Good. Oh my gosh.
Very smooth sailing, but had so many important lessons that I definitely want to share a little bit. So this go round, because of the traumatic experience with the first pregnancy, my OB team ordered that I take low dose aspirin after 12 weeks gestation to prevent the onset of preeclampsia again. And so that was new to me. I was like, okay, cool. Every doctor's appointment, I had a urine test that was evaluated for protein in the urine. And I really want to stress that every single doctor's appointment, I had the urine test with results. And it's very key to make sure you see your results. And again, that's critical information that saved me with this last pregnancy that I'll get to in a little bit. But going back to the second pregnancy, I was determined to have a VBAC, which of course we know vaginal birth after C-section, because I had struggled walking and sitting up, all the whole nine that goes into the C-section recovery. And I was like, I don't want that. I want a natural birth. And it was great because, once again, being your advocate, I asked my OB team, they had a scheduled C-section for me. They just didn't want to take a chance. And I was like, well, can I just have a few more days? Let's just push it back a little bit longer before you schedule it. And the power of manifestation and believing in what you want worked, because 2 days before that pushed back date, I went into labor with my son, and it was again, 10 to 12 hours of labor, successful epidural. My dilations came quickly, pushed for less than 30 minutes, and boom, he was there, full-term, healthy baby, which was going to be my only full-term baby. And no complications, home a few days later. And it was such a representation of hope for me, because my family was like, when I tell you so many people were mad at me for getting pregnant again, they're like, why are you having another baby? Because they were so scared of what would happen. It was so touch and go. And so many people, including the nurses and the doctors there, like prayed over me, checked on my baby for me. Like we went back a year after, and like they're running down the hallway when we were coming to bring our daughter back. Cause it was like a family. It was so much that happened with myself and her that people were just so scared that it might happen again. But second go round, it was perfect, And so I was like, yeah, I got this. This is great, And so, yeah, it was great until fast forward again. Now we're on pregnancy number 3. And my husband and I were really happy as a family of 4. But when I actually went to the doctor and for a routine checkup, and they told me that I might not be able to have children because I had so many fibroids that they noticed that they could worsen. And she was like, it's not guaranteed, but it's a chance that you may not be able to carry. If you wait longer, if you ever wanted to have another child, you may not be able to carry to term. And so putting that in my head, we were like, oh man, let's think about it. Do we want to have another one? And we decided, yeah. And as another little quick side note, before I had any children, I lost my dad some years ago. He passed. And I had a dream where he was, in heaven. And I saw 3 silhouettes of children. I was like, oh, okay, I'm meant to have 3. But it was always in my head. It was like no big deal. But when I had my first, I was like, okay. And I had a second. And I was like, well, maybe I'm supposed to have a third. And so I shared that with my husband for years. And we were like, yeah, we're ready. Let's have one more final baby. And what I probably saw was him playing with 3 at once, because to our shock, we were pregnant with spontaneous triplets. So
that is crazy.
Yeah. And I went there early because I thought I had like tiny little bleeding again, and I got scared. And I was like, oh no, I could have a subchorionic hemorrhage again. And so because of that, they saw me a tiny bit earlier than what I was supposed to for my first visit. And she was like, oh, you might want to look at this. And so there we go. Shock and appall. Like, I can't believe I'm having triplets, but we went from 2 to 5 overnight in the blink of an eye. And so the whole experience, honestly, was a challenge. All my symptoms were exacerbated. Like, it was harder mentally and emotionally than even physically. And that was tough enough. Everything was different this time. So around 16 weeks, my beloved OB team, they told me that I was going to have to transfer, want to leave them and transfer to the sister location that's further away. It's about an hour away from us. And they had a multiples clinic, and they said they would be able to take care of triplets and myself. They're better prepared for this high order pregnancy. And so I was reluctant, but it did have its benefits. And immediately when I went there, about 18 weeks, they took me from one low dose aspirin a day to 2, given my history and given that I had severe preeclampsia with a high order pregnancy. But going to about 24, 25 weeks, I want to refer back to the urine test that I made a note of for my second pregnancy, because after that, I made sure that every lab I had, I looked at online. I could see my doctor's notes online. And with this new hospital, I noticed that they didn't initially give me urine samples. I asked for it, and they took it for every routine appointment. But when I looked online, I saw that I wasn't getting any results. And so I messaged my doctor. Like I said, I was about 24, 25 weeks. And I was like, hey, can I get the latest results about my labs? And when I sent the message, a nurse intercepted it and stated that, several years ago, governing bodies of the OBGYN practice determined that urine samples were not protocol anymore. They were only given if there were signs and symptoms, and it's no longer a standard care. And whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I let her know that just 2 years ago, with my second pregnancy, I not only received this as part of my standard care, but especially I'm the walking definition of a sign, because I'm over 35 at the time. I'm carrying triplets, and I experienced preeclampsia so badly in the past, so severely that it almost took my life. So of course, after that, she forwarded my message, and it was part of my standard care. But my point is that you can't assume anything. Like, I had the urine samples, they weren't analyzed, but I caught it. And if I didn't, a huge staple in catching preeclampsia prematurely would have been taken from me as high risk, and I never would have known it. So as well-intentioned as people can be, you have to be on top of your labs and everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's something you would just not even know to do if you hadn't been through that experience already.
Exactly. Yeah, I just didn't. It just became my new routine of pregnancy, from second pregnancy to third. I checked it all. Not so much that I freaked out and made myself kind of overly concerned, but just so I can be aware. And it paid off. So fast forward to the birth, I was 30 weeks, and I had previously seen the doctor so many times for overnight evaluations because my Braxton Hicks contractions were so strong that the only thing missing was the presence of dilation. Like, However, this time I was talking to my nurse and I was saying, hey, can I have an Epsom salt bath for my feet? Because it hurt so bad. I couldn't walk. My edema was so bad. I was a marshmallow. You could like put your handprint in my body and it would stay there. It was just really bad. And so she was like,
were the overnight evaluations like you'd be admitted to the hospital and they would just like have trackers on you for heartbeats? Okay.
They would have trackers on me. They would check to see if I was dilated because I had such bad contractions. It felt like the only thing missing was they weren't like complete all the time for a certain amount of time rapid, but sometimes they would be back to back to the point. Even the nurses, when I was there for a few evaluations, were like, well, the contractions even made it to the monitor. It was just really like, they were like, but you're not dilated, so I can't. Everything else, but you're not dilated, you know? And so I was just over it.
Could you feel like all three babies? Like, could you tell that there were multiples in there? Like, what did it feel like?
Oh gosh, yes. It was, they took over my body. So I had one that was like so low. It just was like the worst kicking down there you could ever imagine.
Oh my gosh.
And I had another from mid-second trimester all the way through delivery that was breached and her head was in my rib. And the pain of that, I just would get to a point where I would push her head down. And then I had my other little baby girl just tucked in the back. But
she was being good.
She was being good. She was like, all right, everyone else is taking over. I'll just chill back here.
Aww.
Yeah, but you could always feel it. And it was always some kind of symptom. And that's why I just became so overwhelmed with the idea that because I missed my baby shower because I was in the hospital the last time before delivery. And so when I was calling her, she was like, I know we see you all the time, but something's not normal. I couldn't really breathe. And so after every phrase, every other few words, I would stop and catch my breath and I was breathing so heavy. And she said, this isn't normal. I need you to come in. And again, because of all the other experiences, I was like, I'm fine. This is normal. Everything terrible is normal. I was like, I've experienced so much. But she said, no, just come in. And God bless her for it because I come in, my husband drives me in and I'm 4 centimeters dilated. And so I was in labor around 10 p.m. and successful epidural, a couple hours later, being conscious for a C-section for the first time. That wasn't super fun, but it was different. And, experiencing that couple hours later, I had my babies. They were 3+ pounds each and everything was healthy. They went to the NICU for about a month. They stayed there. But honestly, I feel like this pregnancy, the biggest lessons were after delivery.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
But was there any question with the delivery? Was it just always going to be a cesarean?
Always. They told me actually because of the triplets that they were not going to let me go past 34 weeks. That's considered about term. Okay. 36 is like a stretch, but I was like, no, I don't have to be a warrior. 34 is good enough. They were delivered at 31, like almost 31 exactly. But that's crazy. You carried triplets longer than your first daughter. And I was like, I know it's crazy. But they said this is going to be it. And if anything happened before then, of course, I was being seen weekly, but 34 was the cutoff. So when I got there, they were ready for me. They saw me so much. Like I said, it took 2 hours. I got right in there. Babies were delivered and thinking all was well, just on my road to my regular standard recovery, but not so much. So I stayed in the hospital for 5 days. They sent me home with a blood pressure cuff because that was, covered by my insurance and recommended. But I noticed that even when I was there during the stay, something was off because my blood pressure, I've experienced this before, so I know what's going on. And I always I tell women, like, get a baseline, like know what your body does before you're pregnant so that you know what's your normal. Like, because everyone's normal isn't the same. There's certain alarms and numbers, of course, but all normal isn't the same. So for my body, I was like, well, 144 over 81 might be standard for some people postpartum, but not me. Like I don't think that's normal. And so it never went over the 140 over 90. And so they couldn't say, okay, you're symptomatic. But again, that inner knowing stayed. So I get home and spend one night at home. The next day, I take my blood pressure and everything was still teeter-totting around that 140 above 80s, and I didn't like it. So I called my OB team and I asked to be prescribed labetalol. And I was like, oh, can I have that? And they were like, we can't prescribe any medication without evaluating you. But we stayed on the phone for a good hour just talking to people, telling them my concerns and worries. And they said, based off of that alone, just come in later. Like, you seem worried. We can tell you're concerned. Just come in. And so I was like, okay. We stayed around for a little bit, got ourselves prepared to get ready to go. And like I said, I wasn't in a big rush because I thought I'll just go in, get my prescription, get evaluated, and be okay. But we saw that my blood pressure turned into 173 over 94. And it's like, all right, you have officially been diagnosed with severe postpartum preeclampsia, because that was the number I had at home right before I went in, because I just knew that I felt like it was about to jump. I didn't know how high, but I felt like it was about to jump. So we get there. They inform me that I'm going to have the magnesium drip again, 24 hours. But one of the big things was they were like, okay, postpartum preeclampsia is more rare, but what symptom did you have? We have your numbers, but what symptom did you have? And once I was back in triage and they were telling me to go through it all, I made a mention that the right side neck pain was what I experienced as one of my first, just describing how I'm feeling. And it didn't click until my husband said, well, you definitely know next time to pay attention to that right side neck pain. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that, oh my God, like, it's not mentioned as a symptom for preeclampsia, but I can't be the only woman that has right side neck pain as the first sign. And so the first time it was just treated with like those little heat packs that you like squeeze and they put on your body to help with your like muscles and things like that. But I didn't think anything of it until he said it. So I just wanted to put that out there to pay attention to that also, just like you do your other symptoms, because I truly believe that was my first line of defense. That was my first sign.
Yeah. And just like listen to your intuition if things seem off.
Absolutely. And so when they started putting me under for my magnesium drip, 24-hour magnesium drip in my IV, my body went into a shock immediately when I got hooked up. My entire right side, from my head to the right side of my body, down past my ribs, like just had an excruciating pain. My eyesight I was blinded, white flashes, all that. And they gave me a migraine cocktail in my IV about 2 different times over the course of the 24-hour period. Initially when I got it, but they had to give it to me one more time. And they thought it was a shock from the severe postpartum preeclampsia. So they're like, thank God you got here when you did, because immediately my body was starting to go into a shock. And so the rest of the story, I truly believe, I found a journal entry, and I'm not going to read all in detail, but it summarized this experience, and it gave me so many lessons in advocacy and trusting your inner knowing. So on that Tuesday is when I called the nurse and asked for my blood pressure medicine. And through that Friday morning, that same week, I experienced a severe postpartum preeclampsia, Bell's palsy. I had temporary hearing impairment with pressure buildup in my ear, which sent me into a panic because I work in audio. And I had an MRI to rule out a possibility of a stroke, because with the Bell's palsy, I had right side facial paralysis. And I then was pleading with the nurse again for blood pressure medicine, so much so that she brought in the doctor on staff, and who eventually wrote me a prescription that I initially asked for days prior of the labetalol. And they sent me home that Friday. I thought I was on the road to recovery again, but with something not feeling right, that inner knowing, like you just said, I checked my blood pressure again. And hours later, that same day I was discharged, I had a reading of 180 over like the high 90s. And I called the hospital where I gave birth and told them my reading. I said, can I speak with a doctor? They told me to call back in 30 minutes. And I was like, no, I'm not. I can have a seizure. So I need to speak to somebody now. And they were like, okay. And in that moment, I was like, I'm not going back to the hospital. I just don't. Unfortunately, I lost faith in them taking care of me. They had my babies. They were doing great in the NICU. But I just was like, when the doctor got back on the phone, I was like, I want to go to my home hospital, which is the sister hospital that's a little bit closer to me. And so I get there and I overhear them saying they were looking at my medication because on the way there, I'm scared. I'm texting my cousins for prayer and my husband before when we were driving to the hospital was like upbeat. It's more somber. Like I really feel like something might happen to me. And so when we get there, I hear them saying, why is this dosage so low? Like I thought that it was the right prescription, but it was what they told me was a mild prescription. It was like 100 milligrams, something really small. They said it's only given to mild cases and not someone who experienced severe preeclampsia. But the doctor who prescribed it at the time was on staff. He never saw me before, had no idea about my history. And I'm just telling him, but he's looking at my numbers alone. And he was like, well, you're not in the dangerous area. So he just prescribed something baseline. But that baseline prescription didn't make a dent in my healing. And so my home hospital ended up keeping me overnight again for about 2 to 3 days just to get the right combination of medicine that worked for my blood pressure. And they ended up switching it to nifedipine, which I found out they said actually works especially well on Black patients, which I was like, oh, that makes sense. Last time they had to up me to nifedipine, and that ended up being the medicine that, helped heal me. And so my initial OB team, they reevaluated me while I was there, also sending in the neurology staff, and they are the ones that confirmed Bell's palsy because the other hospital told me that it wasn't Bell's palsy. And the new team also set me up with an excellent outpatient neurologist that fit me in immediately. She evaluated me, prescribed me medication, B12, vitamin D. She ordered labs to rule out other things, set me up with physical therapy, and my Bell's palsy was healed within a couple months. And all that was in my first 12 days postpartum. I spent one night at home. So,
oh my gosh, with 3 babies at home.
With 3,
they were still in the NICU.
They were still in the NICU. So I had to spend one day at home. I had 3 different hospital stays, 2 different hospitals, 3 babies in the NICU, 2 babies at home an hour away. And we're being wheeled back and forth to the NICU, and my husband's driving up and down the road to take care of our oldest 2, but also support me at the hospital, calling family to come in. And it was chaos. It was chaos. And I was so mentally and emotionally exhausted. And I just started to journal. And that's what a lot of this information was, just notes of journal, me knowing that something is happening for a reason beyond myself.
Yeah.
Because that whole experience, I knew from the beginning that I just wanted blood pressure medicine. But I had to go through all these days of all this stuff just to circle back and have blood pressure medicine. But now I have all this wealth of knowledge and experience of what to say, how to approach these things completely differently that I would have never got if I just would have got the prescription and not all of these things in those like 4, 5, 6 days. And so I came out of it with the ultimate lesson of patient advocacy, with the tools and the tips, like I said, to share for the next mom, a roller coaster of just having better discernment of when I feel like I'm under medical care that truly has my best interest at heart, and paying attention to that inner knowing. The uneasiness is a tap. Like it really is something that you pay attention to. It's trying to get your attention. So don't ignore that inner knowing. It may not be a medical symptom that you can like calculate, but it's just as important, and that should be paid attention to, So I had postpartum depression as well. I didn't take medicine because I was just really scared about it, honestly. But the overstimulation, the 5 kids, 5 and under, with 3 newborns who are all colicky, they all spit up a lot. I always say they're like, how did you do it? And I was like, Jesus in a village, because I just...
Yeah. What help did you have?
I had the village, my family, my friends, my in-laws, like my husband's family, my family, we all came together, and I finally opened myself up. I'm the type that's like, no, I got it. I'm good. I'm fine. But that was a lie. I wasn't fine. I admitted that. I admitted that I had these crazy thoughts. I admitted that I was, I needed to go cry by myself. I feel overwhelmed. I'm overstimulated. Like I didn't ask for this many kids, and I was angry. I had anger. And I felt bad for having anger. I felt bad for all of these crazy thoughts because it just was so much for me. But in the midst of everything, we ended up getting 2 to 4 hours a night, like of sleep. for a good 3+ months. And I still had sanity. I still was able to listen to podcasts in the middle of the night because we had to sleep downstairs because none of the babies slept in their crib, only in bassinets. And so we're rotating my husband and I, who gets to sleep in the bed and who gets to sleep on the couch, and it was just one of those episodes that I only got through it with Jesus and my village because I don't understand where that strength came from. I can't explain it. And I don't want any mom to feel bad for feeling that way and for having these thoughts like you're more than capable. You were chosen to be that baby or baby's mom. And, you can't beat yourself up, but you can't be prideful. You have to ask for help. You can't do it alone. And that's okay. It's like you can't doubt that you're not this warrior that experienced so much, not just mentally, but your body and all of that stuff. Like I felt stupid. I felt crazy, until I understood and did research about how your brain chemistry changes, your hormones, like everything changes. Like give yourself some grace. And it took me a long time to do that. But I'm on the other side. I see more light, I have more laughs, less tears. I'm still in the mom trenches, but
Yeah.
I'm better. And that is such a relief because I was scared with my thoughts and with my anger and with just so much sadness that I felt guilty that I'm blessed with all these babies, but I'm so sad. And I didn't understand it. But I'm such a advocate for maternal mental health and the blessing for having a community and reaching out and talking to people. If you feel like you have to get medication, that's okay. For me, I was like, well, I don't know. Because I did the evaluation and they were like, yeah, you're there, but we don't have counseling at the time, just medication. So I held off, but it still worked out for me in my case. But I always admitted that something needed to give and I needed to have help. And so I opened myself up and I was vulnerable in times that I didn't want to be, but I'm grateful I was. And so I just thank you for allowing me to share this for years. Ever since, the craziness with my first pregnancy, I always said I wanted to just create things and share things. I've talked to many moms in between that process, but never on a platform or never just telling people my story. So many people don't even know some people don't even know I have kids, like in certain professional spaces, just because I had so much, and it sounds crazy, and I didn't even think I would say this, but I had so much shame. And that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. But I had it.
But so relatable.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm trying to do all these things, but why did you give me 3 at once? I don't want this, like what?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But I laugh about so many of those things. Now they're almost 2. They'll be 2 in a couple months, all their little personalities, and to see the blessing that I gave my kids and just having one another, the cousins. We just came back from Disney World. That was crazy. It's just like all the things that I didn't think I was able to do. It's like, of course you can do it. You wouldn't be given these precious little ones if you weren't able to do this. You got this, and you really, truly do. You can do more than you ever could imagine. And that's what we need to tell ourselves every day.
Yeah. And having that village. I mean, I always say even with twins, you're gonna need help. You're gonna need to hire someone or have people that can help you in those early days. So with 3, I'm so glad you had that community around you.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without it and without just humbling myself and say, yeah, you can come spend the night, or yeah, you can bring me dinner. It's cool. Right. Yeah, you can get formula. I appreciate it. So that's the journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of it. What resources do you have for us?
Yeah, so you can reach me on Instagram at Samantha Gunny or via email at motherhoodunjudged@gmail.com. And we'll just be providing a lot of resources and links to help moms and pregnant women just feel educated and seen and stay connected throughout their mother journeys. And I'm looking forward to putting more on that. And, thank you again for allowing me to share that. But also, I would like to share the Ovia Health Pregnancy app. That was really helpful for me with all 3 pregnancies. And the thing I love about it is that they have a a thing where you can tap and say if you're having multiples or not. And so for the first two, I'm just having one, but I was able to tap that multiples tab the last time, and they were able to share a lot of things based off of research and things you could track so that when you go to your appointments, you're more armed with knowledge and food, which was very helpful for me because with the third pregnancy, I experienced malnutrition. I only gained 17 pounds until like the very end when I saw a nutritionist who informed me about things I can do to help with my diet, with the babies seeping out. Like they said, they're great parasites. They seeped out all the nutrition. And so I had a great resource in that app as well to tell me what I could and couldn't eat. And so the Ovia Health Pregnancy app was great. Also, Pialog, baby feeding tracker app, that ended up being a lifesaver for me with the triplets because with it being 3 newborns at once and so many different schedules with this baby pooping here, this baby needing food this time, I couldn't keep it all together. It all ran together. But with this app, I was able to give each baby a profile and put the time that each baby did what. So if I had to, because glycerin was given if like when baby was constipated and I'm like, oh man, when did this one do that? When did that one do this? You know, everything was right there. And it took me a while to find an app that would take triplets, but it did. So if you ever need help, especially with multiples, if you have, or even with singletons, if you're having problems remembering all of the information around your baby's eating and bathroom schedules and things like that, then just write that one in your little side notes because it'll be really helpful to you. As well as Good Moms Have Scary Thoughts by Karen Kleiman. That book I felt so seen. Like I felt normal reading that book. And it was particularly for women who might be experiencing, like new moms experiencing postpartum depression or any postpartum rage, any of these things that you might go through that you feel like, I'm a bad mom for thinking this or for feeling this. Yeah. It validates you so beautifully. And you have spaces where you can fill in things about yourself and your pregnancy and your norms. And it's beautifully like illustrated.
Yeah, it's like a graphic novel kind of. Yeah, it's a great book. It really
is. It's a wonderful book. And it lets you feel okay. It gives you permission to be okay with what you're experiencing with great resources to help you within that book as well. So that's what I would say. Ending with also, please join a supportive mom group or community if you can. It was great. I ended up starting one at my church. And the community, I can't say enough about it. You really can't do this alone. You can, but I don't think you should. Yeah. And I don't mean alone, I mean with another human being to support you. We all need somebody, whether or not you're single, married, one baby, 5 babies, you need somebody. You're human as well. You matter. Your health. You have to be well for your babies, and you can't have so much pressure on just you. I plead you. I plead you, moms, get help. Yeah. Reach out. You'll be surprised how many people are in love with the idea of relieving you. Yeah. Yeah.
Great parting words. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll put the resources and your contact information and everything on the show notes. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Bren. I appreciate you so much. Your platform is a blessing to so many. So I just hope you and yours are always blessed for it. It's such a gift.
Thank you. Now I'm going to chat with Abigail about all the amazing things they have going on with Zenith Health. Hi, Abigail. Thanks so much for coming on the Birth Hour to talk with me about Zenith Health.
Thanks so much, Bren. So excited to be here.
Before we get into that discussion, will you tell listeners just a little bit about you and your role with Zenith?
Yes. So I'm Abigail Bertelson. I'm the founder and CEO of Zenith. We're a newer company. We just launched earlier in the spring of 2025 and super excited to share a little bit more.
Awesome. And let's talk about just why you started Zenith and what it is.
Yes, definitely. We actually started Zenith just on the basic premise that it's so wild in 2025 that we still don't have good answers about some of the most basic questions in pregnancy. Things that I'm sure all of the listeners to the pod have gone through at some point. Is melatonin okay? What about Robitussin for my cough? Is it normal to gain this much weight by week 20? A really topical one that keeps coming up in the last few weeks with all of the discourse around SSRIs and antidepressants, right? Can I keep taking my SSRI while I'm trying to conceive and while I'm pregnant. And there's so much research and data missing, but we just looked at this and thought it doesn't have to actually be this way. There's millions of pregnancies in the US every single year, all of which contain thousands of these little experiences around medicines and symptoms, supplements, quality of life, all of these different aspects of pregnancy. But as an industry, we're not capturing or learning from this really effectively. A fun fact that is not that fun that I like to share is many people are surprised to learn that women weren't even required to be in clinical trials until 1993.
Yeah.
And pregnant women today are still excluded from trials pretty much altogether, which just means we have a ton of ground to make up on the research side in women's health generally, but particularly within pregnancy. And so what we've done is we've created 2 tools that moms can actually use in their pregnancy journeys for a little bit more peace of mind and to help empower other moms in the future with better data. So the first one is actually what we're calling the Pregnancy Evidence Project. It's a fully opt-in research study. It's fully observational, which means the cool thing is that you can actually contribute to research without changing anything about what you're doing or trying any experimental treatments, which is the beauty of learning from real-world experiences. And the second is what we're calling Penny, which is our personal pregnancy evidence navigator, hence the nickname for Penny. And you can ask Penny essentially any of your pregnancy questions wherever and whenever they come up to see the latest data and evidence. So Penny can help you cut through all of the noise of navigating across social media and Google searches and your friend's sister who just had a baby and did that thing and the baby was fine. So really trying to bring a bit more of the latest and greatest research papers and clinical guidelines and physician authored content to be more accessible and readily available to moms.
Very cool. So how have you seen people using Penny so far during pregnancy?
Yeah, we've seen lots of women turning to Penny for the late night panic Google type of questions. I'm trying to fall asleep. Can I take this melatonin? Things like my symptoms went away. Should I be super worried about that? Am I having postpartum anxiety or is this the normal baby blues? And a lot of moms have shared with us that it's super helpful to get these responses kind of in real time, assuage the immediate fear, and then actually share the link and share the response that they're finding with their trusted team, whether that's their partner or their spouse, a doula that they might be working with, a midwife or an OB, to actually inform a more detailed discussion about their concerns or questions, because it's often kind of a two-sided thing where you want that immediate reassurance, but that doesn't fully, answer your question, or you might want to continue talking to your provider about it. And so in that vein, we've actually also been working with a lot of doulas and other birth workers who have themselves found Penny to be a really helpful tool in pulling, lots of evidence and kind of research papers in response to questions from their clients, or helping share Penny with their clients when they first get started as that kind of additional line of defense for, the random times at which these questions often come up.
Right. So it's kind of like asking like Chat GPT, but it's only pulling from evidence-based research, right?
Exactly. So it's only pulling from kind of our library of studies that we think are good, clinical guidelines, things that the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists is recommending. So we want it to be really that trusted source to get stuff that is high quality.
Yeah. And you mentioned postpartum. So is this something that supports people from like all aspects of trying to conceive, pregnancy, postpartum, or what's kind of the guideline there?
Yes, Penny is best for women who are currently pregnant, but we can also pull evidence around postpartum experiences. So we actually see a lot of folks use this for questions around breastfeeding and lactation exposures, as well as postpartum mental health questions and things like that. And we also support evidence focused on fertility and trying to conceive. So a lot of moms have questions about what to do in preparing for this pregnancy journey, which Penny supports as well. And the Pregnancy Evidence Project, which is the research side of things, also supports postpartum. So you can join even if you've already had your baby and share a little bit more about your experience after the fact.
Very cool. So speaking of the Pregnancy Evidence Project, how does that work? Can you just share a little bit more about, some of the things you guys are trying to bridge as far as gaps in pregnancy research?
Definitely. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have a long way to go in women's health research and in pregnancy research. And a lot of this is because women have been excluded from clinical trials for so long, and particularly in pregnancy. And so our goal is really to learn from all of the things that are already happening today. We think it's this total misnomer that people say there's no data, we can't answer these questions, because we all probably know 10 moms who have made 10 different decisions on any given intervention or question, or had 10 versions of the same symptom. And so really how this project works is women can decide whether or not they want to opt in. It's fully optional. All of the data is completely private, firewalled, and segregated from the question asking side. So there's no, risk of your data being exposed to advertisers or used for marketing. It is purely governed by an institutional review board research project. And women can basically share brief surveys on a weekly and trimester level basis, just talking about their symptoms that week, their quality of life, any major exposures they had. So things like women with chronic conditions who might be continuing medications that they're using, acute issues or, illnesses that come up during pregnancy, asking women if they took, for example, Zofran for nausea or, Unisom or B6 or some of these really commonly used remedies. And women can also consent to share their medical record data so that ultimately we have this very robust data set that looks at experiences and health outcomes for mom and baby at birth so that we can all answer the question that's on everyone's mind, which is really, does doing X affect how baby is going to feel and how baby is growing and how mom is going to feel. And so we're really excited because we think that by taking this approach, we can get to much more scale than, any of the research projects that have really happened in pregnancy before, so that we can finally have high enough sample sizes to power really, really interesting analyses around how other moms are going through pregnancy and being able to share that information back with both moms, but also researchers and the teams that are trying to publish, hopefully, better research on this for the future.
Yeah, this is so exciting. It feels very grassroots, and I love that anyone can get involved. And where can people go to do that?
Yeah, definitely. People can check out our website at www.zenithhealth.io. That's a great landing page to check out either Penny if you have a question that you want to ask, or start getting involved with the Pregnancy Evidence Project. The Pregnancy Evidence Project does have a fairly lightweight, what's called informed consent process. So we want to make sure that as people are joining, they're fully aware of what they're signing up to, how their data is going to be used and protected, how it will be used kind of down the line. And once you do that, you can start submitting surveys and sharing your experience.
Awesome. And with the Penny aspect, there's no cost involved with that, right?
No cost. One of our core values of the company is that we really want to make all of this information more accessible and transparent to moms. It's really frustrating to see sometimes the cost associated with getting access to better knowledge and, finding a research paper, but it's behind a $75 paywall. So it's really important to us to democratize this access for folks who are looking for really good information.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm so glad I got to hear more about this and share with my listeners, and I'm excited to see where everything goes with Penny and with the project.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bryn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again to Samantha for sharing her stories with us, and to Zenith Health for sponsoring this episode. I will have links to everything on the show notes, which you can find by going to thebirthhour.com and searching for Samantha's name in the search bar. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.